Welcome to another episode of the Afikra podcast. My name is Mikey Mhenna. Today I have the honor of welcoming two people who I admire tremendously, Sultan Sooud Al-Qassemi, who is a dear friend, who is also the founder of Barjeel Art Foundation and an enormous supporter of art all over the world, but in particular art and artists from and of the Arab world. Also with me is Dr. Ridha Moumni, who is a historian of art and archaeology, who is at Christie's today. And it is a really honor to have both of you on the series. I'm excited to talk to both of you about your work, but in particular, the work that you just have been working on in London. So welcome to Afikra to both of you.
Thank you, Mikey.
So Ridha, let's start with you. I'm going to read a few words, and I would love for you to tell the people who are listening what these words signify. Kawkaba, highlights from the Barjeel Art Foundation. What does this mean?
It means come and visit Christie's. No, more seriously. Kawkaba is a project we've been working with Sheikh Sultan. It's it's a really, really amazing project, probably one of the biggest exhibition of Arab art ever made. It's an exhibition we've been talking about. Kawkaba is the idea of the constellation, the idea of the stars. Kawkaba is the idea of paying tribute and homage to Arab artists. And Kawkaba is also a journey into the art of the Arab world during the 20th and 21st century, mainly about modern works coming from the Barjeel Art Foundation. It's a project that I'm very excited about. We opened the exhibition last week, and we've been working with Sheikh Sultan on selecting the pieces, bringing these pieces here in London. And it's truly an honor because it's an exhibition on the Arab art, on the Arab modernism, but mainly an exhibition about Arab culture and history. And it's also a gender balanced exhibition, actually showcasing more female artists than male artists, but also really trying to match this idea that Sultan launched a few years ago about gender equity balance in Barjeel, in the Sharjah Art Museum. So we are really delighted. It's a historic moment also at Christie's, because for the first time we are opening an exhibition in the summer, open to all. And when the Middle East is taking over an historic institution, an historic building, the one that we have in London, King Street, that Christie's occupied for the last 200 years, to welcome so many, I don't want to say the Barjeel collection, but I want to say some of the greatest artists who are Mahmoud Sabri, Ibrahim Salahi. I think we will talk probably about these artists and focusing on some of them, but really welcoming so many great names of Arab art and cultures and pioneering artists, very well-known artists and lesser-known artists, is really an honor and privilege for us.
Amazing. Sultan, before I bring you in, I want to ask one more question to Ridha. Your day job, Ridha, is Deputy Chairman, Christie's MENA. What does that actually mean to people who don't know what Christie's is? I mean, maybe they've heard the term and they think, okay, it has something to do with art. Maybe I've seen it in movies. But what does that actually mean to somebody who is uninitiated?
So Christie's is the oldest auction house founded 250 years ago, based in London, that operates in more than 40 countries. And these auction houses sell different categories of art, of jewelry, also real estate, but really known by the general public for its art activities, selling masterpieces, important artworks, and including artworks from the Arab world. We have every year 2 important sales of modern and contemporary art from the Arab world. And my role is really leading the strategy on the activities of Christie's in the MENA region, but also more globally, because as I mentioned, this exhibition on Kawkaba and the larger exhibition that we did on modern and contemporary art of the Middle East is an exhibition taking place here in London. So Christie's is really a lot of people know this name. It resonates with usually when they see the press, when they see activities in the press about telling very important artworks, most expensive artworks in the world. But it's really an auction house operating and very famous and very important. And that really helped also important collections to be built, including the collection of Barjeel.
Amazing. So Sultan, I have a question for you. You have exhibited work, Barjeel has exhibited work all over the world. I'm curious, what was it like to have such a sort of iconic collaboration in London at Christie's? I'm curious what the response was like and how was this different than some of the other events you've been a part of?
Oh, on a personal level, this is the first time that I work with a very close friend on a major exhibition anywhere in the world. Ridha is a colleague and friend and someone I admire and respect very much. And then on the second level is that this is the first time that so many of the masterpieces, if I can use that word, of Barjeel are being shown at the same space, at the same time. This is a huge opportunity for me, and it's a dream come true, Mikey, because for the past few years, so many works were on loan to many different institutions, so there was no opportunity to see the works in one fell swoop. That you look right and you see 20 works, you look left, you see another 20 works by some of the most important artists from the Arab world. The reception has been very, very positive, Mikey. On the first panel day, we've had over 200 attendees. We had another panel a few days into the show that also attracted over 240 people who registered. From what I understand is that there's an average visitation in the 3 digits every day. So I'm very happy with that turnout. And finally, the media, the social media coverage of the exhibition has been outstanding. We have been featured in so many places, and maybe my favorite of which, of course, is afikra.
Rooting for the home team. I love it. So can I ask a really simple question? Sultan, can you walk me through the logistical nightmare that it must be to bring a collection this large from Sharjah or from maybe elsewhere where they're on loan to London? How does that actually work? I mean, must be this Herculean effort.
That's a great question, Mikey. And so Dr. Ridha Moumni, the curator of the exhibition, selected a set of artworks in the beginning, and then within a few days and even maybe up to 2 or 3 weeks later, we realized that some of the works that he had selected were already on loan to exhibitions such as Beirut and the Global 60s. So that forces you to reassess and reconsider the artworks and maybe think about replacing some of the artworks with others. The other thing, Mikey, is that many of our works were in different places around the world. So, for example, some of the work was in the Ashmolean Museum here in England, but some of the work was in the US. Some of the works came from Sharjah. Some of the works is in the storage in Dubai. And so it's a logistical challenge, I would say, to make sure that all these works travel and arrive at the same time. And for those who don't know, one of the challenges is building a crate. And unfortunately, in the arts world, Mikey, the building of crate is not the most environmentally friendly exercise, because with every museum that requests work, then you have to build a crate for them that is suitable for the artworks that they've selected. So if they've selected 10 artworks, some of them are 1 meter by 1 meter, but one of them is 2 meter by 1, for instance, you will have to build a crate just for that selection of works. So we try to be as environmentally friendly to reuse some of the crates as much as possible, but it's very difficult, for example, to keep reusing crates, for an endless period of time. So yes, there's many, many challenges there.
How do you, Ridha, how do you go about curating this? I mean, the term curator is a term that's used and I would assume misused all the time. But you guys are friends. I'm sure over dinner were talking, saying, I'm dreaming up this idea. This would be amazing. And I want to put this together and put this together. And the world is our oyster. But there are obviously logistical limitations that say that with restrict which pieces that can be a part of it. But before you had to live in the reality of those limitations, how were you dreaming up the curatorial vision for the show?
To be honest with you, the curatorial vision is something that comes in a very organic way. I think sometimes it's very, for me as a curator, first you need a real mental space to think about curation. You need a mental space to think about how to hang the works, what are the topics and thematics. I have to confess it's challenging sometimes when you're working in an auction house and how busy could be in an auction house while you are working on the curation. But my idea was very, very simple. Is usually when I do an exhibition, my main goal is how to give the key of understanding to people who don't know anything about art and Arab art. And especially this exhibition is in London. And my goal is obviously bringing people from our community to see these artworks. But at the same time, my main concern is if someone from a Londoner who never saw Arab art comes to this exhibition, how I can bring him to understand, to see, to appreciate, and also to remember what he saw. The goal, I think, for all curators is I want the person who comes and visits the show to be different when he leaves the show. So I had like really three challenges. Is first, I'm curating already a collection curated by Sultan because he had the first choice on all these pieces. So it's almost a curation within already a curation. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge is how to find the themes developed by the collection, especially, for instance, you're showing these pictures that deals a lot with one of the most important aspects of the collection, which is political works or showing and reflecting the social and cultural transformations in the Middle East, and here in this picture, particularly on the Levant region. So this is something that I wanted to highlight also in the wall as highlighting different topics developed by Barjeel over the years. And finally, I wanted to put myself in the position of someone who wants to discover more. So obviously I need to adapt to a space, I need to adapt to the aesthetic, and need to adapt to the topic. So I decided to do really different sections, one on an open space. And my idea was usually in the Arab tradition, Kawkaba reflected a little bit this space on a very almost philosophical way, but also I wanted it to be seen almost like a garden because we always had this idea of the garden in the Islamic tradition in the entrance of a house. I wanted something very soft to the visitors that can invite them then to discover more. And then the topic that I developed was really some themes about abstraction, some themes about portraiture, which reflects also the diversity and identity of the Arab world. Another one is about the question of the crafts and the traditions, because I wanted also people to understand that not all Arab artists go to the West, learn for the West and bring Western influence, but also we have our own legacy, heritage and tradition that nourished and fueled also artistic creativity in the Arab world. And then there was also this aspect because Sultan was teaching politics in the Arab world in many universities, Yale, Columbia, Harvard, name them. But also I wanted really to develop the topic and show also that the artists of the region were building statement while they were also participating to the nation building in different countries in North Africa, in Middle East, and also some of them were jailed because of their political freedom and political expression. So that was the main idea, was showing the complexity of the Arab world, but also showing the beauty, the diversity of the Arab world at the same time.
Yeah. You'd mentioned earlier the gender balance, and this is something that Sultan, you have really been a huge advocate for, whether it's gender balance on panels or gender balance in exhibitions. Are there a few artists that you wanted to ensure were a part of this this exhibition that were non-negotiables, whether Ridha wanted them in it or not? You said these people don't get enough play, they need to be a part of it, and it won't be balanced without them. Are there any names that come to mind?
Yes, there's one actually even that you show. I don't want to name an artwork specifically, but there's one that's on this this image right there. that I pushed because I felt that it is important to represent this female artist. To be honest, Mikey, this is one of the artworks that we had acquired was a recent acquisition from Syria. It's on the bottom right on that screen. And the work really needed some TLC, some tender loving care. It needed to be dusted, restored. Some parts of it needed to be fixed, but also to be reframed and restretched. But I said, you know what? This is an opportunity that this artist never had to show as part of this group of her peers in the Arab world. So I gently encouraged my dear friend Ridha to select the work. And I hope that it was the right decision. I know that I can get emotionally attached to artworks. And so it's important that people also keep me in check and say, well, we can accept this work, but maybe not that work. I think the process, as Dr. Ridha said, is an organic process with a little bit of room for negotiation. But I do, when I remember when we agreed with Dr. Ridha to do this exhibition early on, I said my one condition is that it has to be a gender balanced exhibition, and he was very welcoming to this idea, and I'm very happy to see the nucleus of our idea that was developed in 2009 for Sharjah is now being manifested in London.
I love it. Well, let's talk about one of the female artists that is a part of it. And Ridha, I would love for you to talk about Safia Farhat for many reasons, but one, that this is one of the artists who is from Tunisia.
Yeah, Safia Farhat is absolutely remarkable. She's probably one of the leading female artists of the 20th century in the Arab world, not only because she's Tunisian. I personally get a little bit emotional with everything dealing with Tunisia, but and also I think, I don't want to be unfair, but I hang her in a very important position also in this exhibition, not because she's Tunisian, but also because what she was echoing. Because Safia Farhat comes from a family of thinkers, politicians. She almost reflects in the arts. The social and cultural transformation of Tunisia under the presidency of Bourguiba, who gives a new status to women. And she really incarnated this new policy also in the arts. I don't want to say that Bourguiba gave her power, but she was extremely powerful. She became the first Tunisian, director of the School of Arts, l'Institut des Beaux-Arts in Tunis in the 60s. And she had an amazing career because when she became director of the Beaux-Arts, as we say in Tunis, she reintroduced traditional craftsmanship. She started working with traditional weavers. They started using traditional ceramics, textile, different objects and different media that the French weren't using. So she really helped and pushed the boundaries in order to decolonize art in Tunisia, but also, let's say, in North Africa. And what I really love in this tapestry is Safia Farhat, such as many artists from North Africa, and here in that case in Tunisia, were having almost a dual artistic practice. One very conventional for the state in order to build and help the state to display artworks representing Tunisian identity, which we usually call Tunisianité. But at the same time, they were also following their artistic freedom. And in this artwork, you can see almost a mix of both, because it's a bride, a traditional Tunisian bride, so a symbol somehow of Tunisian pride, a Tunisian pride of the national culture and heritage. But also when you come close to this tapestry, and for the people who can really visit the show, I invite them to come close to this tapestry, you can see also a composition which is almost abstract in the background, almost also contemporary in the background, with many touches of a color into this tapestry. And it's really an absolute masterpiece, in my opinion. And Sheikh Sultan can tell you that a few years ago, I visited an exhibition, a beautiful exhibition on the artist Abdelaziz Gorgi in Tunis, which has more than 100 artworks. And I took one picture of the picture of one artwork, and it was that artwork, and that was before Barjeel buys it.
Wow. Amazing. Sultan, I want to ask you, I've always wanted to ask you about another one of the pieces in the collection that's always been one of my favorites. And I'm curious if there's a story behind how you acquired it and why it matters so much to you. And this is this Caland piece, which I have always loved.
Mikey, it's also one of my favorite artworks, although this specific artwork is one of those that poses challenges when it comes to hanging it in the Arab world, or at least parts of the Arab world. Not Lebanon, but maybe elsewhere in the Arab world. Huguette Caland was one of the leading artists, not only women artists, but one of the leading artists of Lebanon and the Arab world. And her career spanned 6 decades or so. She was born into a political family where her father was the founding president of Lebanon, Bashar Khouri, but then she married the son, I think, of one of his political challengers or opponents, and took his name. His name was Paul Caland, so her name became Huguette Caland. She was also an artist who was known for a very liberal and free spirit. She lived in Paris and in California before moving back to Lebanon. She led her own life. She collaborated with Pierre Cardin in the 1980s and created these beautiful dresses that had a very sexual and sensual angle to them. And this work specifically is one of her bribe de corps, her body parts series, representing a specific body part of a woman. And it was, for me, what attracted me was initially there was an exhibition taking place in Paris of the nudes. And there was I think a quote, or someone mentioned that Huguette Caland said that she cannot believe that one of her bum paintings is on the buses and streets of Paris being shown as an advertisement. And that it's become accepted as, as a modern, important modern artwork. And it's a very rare series of her work. So I was so happy. We acquired it from an auction in Paris, and it was owned by an important French curator who curated the French pavilion in Venice in the 1970s. I forgot his name. And it might have been like Jean Moulin or something like that. I always confused between him and the French Minister of Culture. But it was an important artwork, and we were very, very to have it. I could tell you also that finally, when we got this work, Mikey, this was maybe the last work of Huguette Caland of that series, of that size, to sell in the 5 digits euros. So after this, her works enter into the 6 digits. So we're very, very lucky to get it at the tail end of the sales.
The tailbone end. So to speak.
That's a good one. Yes.
Okay. I'm curious, like when you look at a piece like this, if Ridha, I'm actually curious for you as a curator, how is a piece like this and a piece like this sort of within the same genre? If you were speaking to a university student, help me understand both the thematic threads that tie them together, but also the socio-political threads that tie them together.
I think in that case, they are hanging in different parts of the exhibition. This work by Abdelhadi El-Ghazar, which is an amazing work that Sultan bought at Christie's, has a very, very different background. First, we are dealing with just to come back. Just to speak about this artwork with the topic Kawkaba. I hang this work near the text on the exhibition because I thought it's really relevant to see these two men with spaceship outfits to be hanging in the topic Kawkaba near other artworks by Osseran, by by also Mohammed al-Melahi, to give an idea, a more general idea about the space, but also the space also in Earth, but also another space. So this is absolutely relevant with the topic of the exhibition, and I wanted it to highlight the main room, the great room in the entrance. And the other work of Huguette Caland is very different from different perspective. First, the work of the Caland is an abstract work, and this one is very figurative, and it's very figurative, showing also Abdelhadi Ghazar was showing the social and political reality of Egypt, and also at some point he decided to leave this political reality, especially when he started having troubles with the regime, because he's been imprisoned for his freedom also to show the reality of the Egyptian people. And the work of Caland is different. It has much more, it's a conceptual artwork. It's an artwork also dealing with abstraction. It's very soft to the eye. And what I decided to do is, in the room dealing with abstraction, I did a part dedicated to the body, to the female body, that is much more represented than the male body. But I'm happy also this section is showcasing female artists, Caland, but also Simone Fatal is on the same wall. Hamidi, the Moroccan modernist, also is this is the celestial forms of Simone Fatal that also recalls somehow the shapes that you can see also in the other paintings, including the one on the painting of Huguette Caland, Bride de Corps. So I wanted a corner very soft for the eyes, because this exhibition deals with different materials and different materiality. And there is a balance between the political background, the cultural background, and also for me, the aesthetic is very important when I'm able as a curator to match these three layers, which is the thematics, the cultural background, and also the aesthetics, because a lot of people need to be attracted. The first impression when you see an artwork is usually what you see, the dimension, the surface, the colors. And sometimes what I need is for them to be attracted from an aesthetic perspective, to start understanding and uncover what is behind the painting and what is the context of the artist, what is the cultural context. So it's they are not hanging near the other. Huguette Caland is somehow, I don't want to say that, but I will say it, she's an easy artist because she's very soft to the eye. And some other artists are much more complex in their artistic and aesthetic identity. And it's all a work of balance. And I think the work of a curator is sometimes try to find the balance for both visitors, but also students.
Do you ever think there's a risk of amplifying and congratulating a specific, and sort of anointing a specific period of time as being sort of like the best period of art? And the reason why I bring this up is because I feel like the 20th century, Arab art from the 20th century, is specifically sort of modern art, is having a moment now. And I wonder if it almost will kind of overshadow some of the art that's coming out, the contemporary artists that are creating work now. And I wonder, both of you would know better than me, but do you ever feel like there's a risk of that? Maybe Sultan, I'll speak to you because you're constantly dealing with this. You're speaking to students on a regular basis. Do they ever sort of allude to this idea of that was a golden period and now there isn't anything worth purchasing, there isn't anything worth supporting, there are no great contemporary artists?
Thank you, Mikey. That's a brilliant question. In fact, for example, in class, when I assign homeworks and assignments, I always make sure to include contemporary art amongst the modern artworks. The issue for me with focusing on modern art is that we still have not, written the not the final word, but even the first words on so many of the artists. On this wall, there are 2 or 3 artists where there exists no biography on them, not even a few lines about them. And so you're talking about artists who lived and existed and produced and participated in exhibitions, and there is not even a paragraph about them. That is one of the reasons why I focus on modernity. Modernity also reflected the changing times, the formation of nation states, the formation of national identities in the Arab world. And unfortunately, because of so many of the wars that the region witnessed in Yemen, in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, and elsewhere, a lot of these modern works have either been lost or destroyed or damaged. So that is why I'm trying to shed a light on them. Having said that, I am in awe of the amazing quality of contemporary art that's coming out of the region today. I can tell you maybe that in the last 6 months that we have acquired more contemporary art than I have over the past 3 years before that. So we have really been focusing on contemporary art on the last few months because I noticed that artists have taken their practice very seriously. I noticed there's a maturity of artworks and artists coming from areas like the Gulf and Lebanon and elsewhere. And I hope that our emphasis on modern art is complementary to contemporary art and not supplementary to it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I love hearing you talk about it. Does it feel like one region when you talk about both sort of modern and contemporary art?
I always get asked this question: what is Arab world? How can you put all these different countries together in one category? And to be honest, it's something I grapple with all the time. And yes, there are there are places that have their unique cultures. There are places that have their unique traditions, their unique identities. If you think of Morocco, it is almost a subcontinent on its own. If you think of the work that comes up with Iraq or Egypt or elsewhere in the Arab world, they do have their own identitarian issues, their own challenges, their own themes, their own concepts, their own movements, their own practices. It's endless. However, Mikey, there exists numerous parallel threads that bound this region together. One of them, for example, is hurufism. The use of the Arabic letter is something that you see in Sudan and in Egypt and in Iraq and in Syria and in Morocco and in the Gulf. And so this is undeniably true. There is the theme of hurufism, hurufiyya, letterism. It's a theme that exists everywhere. The other thing I would say, for instance, is the Arab worldwide solidarity with various topics. For example, Arab artists stood in solidarity with Palestine after 1948 and 56 and 67 and 73 and the Intifada. You see artists from Kuwait and Egypt and Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia and so many other places. There is the theme of Palestine. It exists. For example, Algeria is another theme where so many artists from across the Arab world stood in solidarity with the Algerians fighting against the brutal French occupation. So you see artists like Arif al-Rayes from Lebanon creating a work in solidarity. You see works like Hatem al-Makki of Tunisia creating works and artists from Morocco and elsewhere. So the Arab world artists show solidarity when it comes to major political ruptures in the region. And the lastly was the Arab Spring. Many artists from across the region depicted the events of the Arab Spring. And notice how an event that started in Tunisia had a ripple effect, like a wave that extended into 6 or 7 countries within a period of months. So there definitely is a common strain that ties the Arab world together.
Yeah. Ridha, as somebody who's putting this exhibition together, you said something really interesting earlier. You said, my goal is for somebody to walk out differently than they walked in, right? I think, I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's generally what you meant. Do you have a horse in the race in terms of how they walk out, the nature of the change, or do you just want there to be a change?
It's hard to explain because it depends on the psychology of the visitor and who the visitor is. I can tell you that from the opening of the exhibition last week, we have, I think Sheikh Sultan and I could tell you, and not only us, many people also working here at Christie's. We have in this building 700 employees work here, and all the feedback that we have are extremely positive. And a few days ago, I was doing what we call the walkthrough for all the employees of the company. and let's say the majority of them are English, or they don't have a strong relationship with the Arab world of the Middle East. And I was really, really happy with their interest, their questions, and also aesthetically what they were taking from this exhibition. Every artwork that you see in this exhibition is a window on one geography of the Arab world, or a more common, a more global geography of the Arab world. One window also on the creativity of the person creating the artwork that wants to reflect on his or her own reality. I think it's very hard to define the horse and to tell you what I want them to take more. But I think it's more when you open a lot of windows, when you open a lot of doors, when you open a lot of expression and let the visitor interact with creativity, you always want someone to really have a conversation with the piece. I see artworks as a place of conversation. When you come and see an artwork, sometimes you don't understand why you like it, or you ask questions. Sometimes you can Google, sometimes you try to understand what was the story behind the artwork. What I want is these personal interactions. And for me, it's getting a global interaction and a better understanding. And I want also the people to say that we are creative. We've been always creative in the 20th century. In the 21st century, you were asking the question about highlighting more period more than another one. I think it's normal in every society. You know, when you reflect a little bit on the past and you understand the past, it's easier for you to project on something that you handle and control. So it's easier to understand the career of an artist who died, who lived in a very specific political moment, especially us as Arab. We went through this period of independence, which is really a highlight, a beacon, or almost in our history. It's easier to see it from that way than understanding what is happening from more conceptual or contemporary times. But the goal is really trying to create these connections. And I think I see also this exhibition and this project as a bridge to bring our culture closer to different cultures. And I was saying also that I hope this exhibition, there will be other exhibitions like this in the future, but also all initiative on the Arab world, in my opinion, in anywhere in the West, and especially in big cities such as London, New York, Paris, or other, are very important for our visibility and the inclusion of our creativity on a more global scale.
Okay, to wrap up, we're going to ask two final questions. And I told you beforehand, I want these answers to sort of be dedicated to the high school kids who take Afikra Academy courses, who are always interested in arts. So, Ridha, we'll start with you. Are there two artists who those students should look up immediately on Google, look them up on Wikipedia, look through the arts, become familiar with? Obviously, the list is endless, but if I'm forced to give you only two options, what would those two be?
I think the first artist, and this is, I must confess that before working at Christie's, I had my own views on art and art history of the region. And since I work at Christie's, I see a lot of art from the region, a lot of artworks by prominent artists, lesser known artists. But if there is one artist that I started liking since I work at Christie's and really appreciating, it's probably the Iraqi artist Sheikh Hassan Said, and especially his One Dimension series, when he started really, after writing a manifesto, thinking about his approach of art. I also think by talking with a lot of people who knew him, his personality, charisma, but also how groundbreaking he was in the art history of the Arab world and how generous he was, but also how courageous he was to deconstruct the canvas and the materiality of the canvas and introduce new concepts, new ideas, and really shaping a new Iraqi and Arab identity through his art. And I think Sheikh Hassan Said should be one of the artists that all Arab students should know. And I hope his work will be more and more visible also by the general public.
Great. Who is the second one?
The second one would be, I think I give you some answers, but I think maybe I will change my answer. But I think Safia Farhat needs to be on top of that list. I think Safia Farhat created so many different artworks. She really with her, it wasn't only her. She gave pride also to weavers. She gave pride to artisans. She gave pride to so many people that you don't see, who are in the background. And she worked with them collaboratively, very closely. And I think she enhanced and empowered so many people through her art, but also through the different materials that she selected in order to create her artworks. And I think she's also a unique symbol. There is a museum dedicated to her in Rades, a private museum held by her family. When you see her artworks, you can only be stunned by her creativity and how contemporary it is. I remember there was a beautiful artwork of her, a tapestry of hers that was displayed last year in the Biennale of Venice. And so many people were taking pictures of her artwork, sharing her artworks. And I'm not saying that because she's Tunisian, but it's incredible when you come from this country and knowing the art scene of this country, seeing the almost how impactful is her artwork, even for contemporary visitors today in a global event such as the Biennale in Venice. And I think her art is so sophisticated, but also I think she makes us proud as Tunisian, North African, and Arab in general.
Amazing. Sultan, what about you?
Well, my first choice that I would like to talk about maybe is the cover artwork for this exhibition, Kawkaba. The artwork is called Formative Radiation, and it is by a lesser known but very important Lebanese artist called Safia Sayran Jumbalat. Safia studied first in Rome and then studied in Japan, where she learned Japanese woodcut, for example. She was a pioneer who exhibited in the Mediterranean Biennial in Alexandria in 1970. She's an artist who wanted to depict the organic forms of the world, the celestial objects of the world in her art. She's also a person who is more than just an artist. She founded in the 1980s an Artisana Center, a center to teach crafts for Palestinian refugees, for poor Lebanese, that she founded in Saida, and that I think it's operational still. So she is somebody who wanted to take her practice beyond the studio and give back to the community by educating people about the importance of arts and craft. I very much admire this individual, and I'm very happy that this artwork was selected as the cover piece for this exhibition representing over 150 artworks from the region.
Amazing. And you have a second name as well?
Yes, the second name is an artist who was called Inji Aflatun. Inji was born in an upper middle class family in Egypt. She decided to veer off the chosen path for her. When she was in school, she decided to learn more about Egyptian history and Egyptian culture and Egyptian society. And she found out that even though she was living in a very comfortable life, many people in Egypt were living in very challenging times, especially the youngsters, no access to education, no access to healthcare, no access to clean water. So she became an activist for the rights of poorer Egyptians that even led to her jailing. She was jailed for 4.5 years because she was constantly protesting, demanding rights for Egyptian poor and for women in Egypt. And we have one of her most important works, I think, from the series that she created in jail on display here at Kawkaba. And I encourage young people to learn about this woman who's changed her career when she was in their age. When she was a teenager, she decided to change careers and think about her role as a citizen of Egypt.
Amazing. Okay. The last question I'm going to ask you both, and Sultan, will start with you. If you were to recommend a book for a teenager to go out and check out right now that will help deepen their passion for art from the Arab world, what is a good place to start?
Well, I'm a big fan of a book published by the Shoman Foundation, Darat al-Fanoon in Amman, Jordan. The book was called Arab Art History, and it is basically a survey of their collection. But they invited some of the leading scholars to write about their works. The book is beautifully produced, beautifully executed. It is still maybe my favorite book on Arab art anywhere. If you youngsters, if your universities or your schools do not have it, please encourage them to order this book. It is a journey through art of the Arab world, and the cover image of the work is a painting by Nicolas Sayer, a leading Palestinian artist, depicting the handover of Mandate Jerusalem between the British and the Ottoman occupying forces in 1918. It's a stunning book with stunning images, lots of great text. I encourage you to pick it up.
Cool. Ridha, what about you?
I'll be a little bit more serious and less entertaining for if you tell me teenager, but it will be definitely the Catalogue Raisonné of Mahmoud Said. Mahmoud Said is considered as probably one of the greatest painter of the Arab world, born in Alexandria, I think around 1897, and he died in the 60s, maybe in the 60s. And Mahmoud Said was educated in Europe, educated in Europe, learned also at l'Académie Julian, and then come back to Egypt, and he painted like probably the most stunning paintings at that time in Egypt. Also, while traveling, he painted views of the Nile, of Cairo, people, gens seen, also a lot of portraits. He painted also absolutely beautiful paintings representing Beirut. And there is a monumental work made by my colleague, Valérie Didier, and Dr. Rashwan, who are the two most knowledgeable experts on Mahmoud Said and probably on Egyptian art. And they published a monumental Catalogue Raisonné of 2 volumes showing all and recording all the works of Mahmoud Said, also archives and also essays. So it could be really overwhelming, challenging, and probably also a little bit boring for teenagers. But I remember for me, when I was a kid, I was also seeing, like reading encyclopedia. I was fascinated with all the images. When I was a kid, I didn't have internet and everything, so it was easier to project in books. But the Catalogue Raisonné really, first, it records all the works, and you need for us to record, document, and create also a narrative on the Arab art history. You need these kind of books. They are very, very important to us as researchers, but not only researchers, for everyone. And from there, you can extract so many histories, so many narratives. But also, I think it's so beautiful when you have a book where you have so many pictures of artworks. And I love these kind of books. I have to confess, I haven't read everything. Really, really, I can say I'm very far from there. But I love opening this book, seeing the pictures of the painting, seeing the word of Mahmoud Said of that time. And I think I really encourage everyone to see it, read it. It's a little bit expensive, but I'm happy also if we can find a way to send it to libraries where people can have access to this book. That would be wonderful. But yes, please read it, and more than anything, see the pictures and the artworks of Mahmoud Said.
Amazing. And if I can make a plug, you should get Imperfect Chronology, Arab Art from the Modern to the Contemporary Works from the Barjeel Art Foundation, which is very proudly on my bookshelf. Thank you both so much for being a part of this. If anyone's interested in learning more, look up Christie's Middle East on social media. You can check out more about the exhibition, obviously online. And if you're in London, do yourself a favor and go check it out. It is an honor to have you both on the series.
Thank you, Mikey.
Thank you so much, Mikey. And I'll just add, the exhibition is open until August 23rd, and it's free.
Absolutely.